Hello, thank you for joining the stream. I'm Neil, one of the team members here at Obico. I've been working here with Kenneth for about a little bit over a year now. My background's in mechanical engineering, but have been using 3D printers with mechanical engineering, and before that for about, I guess, about 7 years now. And I at Obico work on most of the marketing and growth related things. The Ask Me Anything round, we kind of decided to do this after getting a lot of questions transitioning from the Spaghetti Detective to Obico. So this will be just a time when you guys can drop any comments in the chat. We have some other questions that we've already gotten from some of our users and you guys already. And if you have anything new, you can just start dropping it in the chat now. Kenneth, you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Oh, sorry. I think I lost you for a few seconds. Sorry, missed that part. My
No problem.
apologies. Yeah. So my name's Kenneth. I am the lead developer at Obico. I guess my background is software programming. I have been doing that like as my full-time job for more than 20 years. So as a matter of fact, since I'm talking about this, and I found it's the Spaghetti Detective. It was Obico was still called the Spaghetti Detective when I founded it. I might as well just go into a little bit of a history of it. So like I said, I am a software programmer for many years, but in the meantime, I'm also a maker, just like all of you. So with a little surprise, I got into 3D printing, and then at that time, just as a software programmer, I was like, ooh, like the software for 3D printing was pretty outdated. Things fair to say that. But then very quickly I discovered Octoprint. So I'm like, that's a decent piece of software among like almost all the other software available to do the 3D printing. So that's when I kind of got into like building Octoprint plugins. And the Spaghetti Detective was either the third or the fourth plugin I built. But like it was different that like for that plugin because it was obvious to me that the usage like quickly picked up. So I remember we like quickly we had like hundreds of users and then like thousands and then like tens of thousands, et cetera, et cetera. So like the before I know it, it's like my time spent on because I started the Spaghetti Detective as a side projects for the Octoprint plugin, but before I know it, like the time I spent on that projects went from like 10 hours a week to like 20 hours a week, and then 30, and then 40, and then 50. So at some points I'm like, oh, like that's just too much. Um, so, and I think fortunately it was a time when the the subscription fees coming from all these pro subscribers, and by the way, thank you very much for supporting us with your subscription because you really like at least financially made it possible for this project to be where we are today. But anyway, like, at that time, I think the fees coming from the subscription was enough not only just to cover the cloud bill, it kind of like can get us to a like ramen profitable at that time. Basically, I was able to survive on ramen. I also did some side project at the time. So basically, I'm like, okay, so I quit my full-time job and then devoted most of my time in the Spaghetti Detective at that time. Um, so that was basically a very short story about how like the Spaghetti Detective got created. Oh, actually, a interesting story about how I came up with that the Spaghetti Detective idea was that I built a few Octoprint plugins, but then I was also teaching myself like machine learning by being engaged in a self-driving robot project. And then, at the end of the projects, I got a self-driving robot, but also I got like a really epiphany that like actually like machine learning is really good at detecting is a good algorithm to detect the spaghetti I get like from time to time on my 3D printer. So that's why I'm like, okay, let's just use it to build it as side projects, and that's where it came from. And I believe that we're the first projects. Now there are more, but at that time we were definitely the first that applied machine learning to detecting 3D printing failure. Anyway, so it was basically the history of the spaghetti detective, and then fast forward, like the earlier this year, we started to realize we have to change the name. So I don't know, like the Neil, do you want to tell a little bit story about like since many people have asked that questions after we announced the name change, like maybe Neil, you can talk a little bit about like why we decided to make the name change.
Yeah, so I think it kind of started in terms of the conversation back in December or maybe January or so, and that was really after we had done a lot of user interviews and talking to a lot of you guys as much as possible, and we were actually just talking about developing new features and some other things like that, or that were really completely unrelated to a name change or anything. But one thing that really came up over and over in terms of how everyone was using the spaghetti detective and what they were using it for was a lot more than just the failure detection. But what we also found out is that the failure detection is kind of how everyone saw it at first, and maybe they assumed it was just the failure detection product. And then once they started using it, they found the mobile app and the remote monitoring and some of these other features. And so the more and more features we developed and started planning, moving beyond just Octoprint and with starting with the Klipper plugin as well, we really just felt that the name, the Spaghetti Detective, was a bit limiting. And if there was any time, the time was probably now to come up with a name that's more representative about the product that we had started to build and hopefully will continue to build. If you want to add anything there, Kenneth.
Yeah, thank you very much for like talking about that, how we came up with that decision. Yeah, like I would say that like I know that a lot of the spaghetti detective users, they feel like a little bit like we like the name. Thank you very much. I definitely take it as like flattering on my side, because somehow I came up with that name when when I was talking to other people about that name. A lot of people say that that's a stupid name. Why why do you even like what it doesn't make sense. But like surprisingly, when I really present the name to the user who are the makers, basically who are familiar with how 3D printing works, almost everyone loved the name. So, and obviously I spend a lot of like my blood and sweat in the projects and in the identity itself. So I feel like it's my baby. But like the so it was a little bit like a painful process for me to actually realize that, oh, like I have to let it go. All right, because the just like Neil said, like we have like we built a lot of other things beyond the failure detection. And then before like like at some point we realized it's actually a pretty complete like the smart printing solution, but like the spaghetti detect name was so like just like Neil said, limiting that like the first impression people are like, oh yeah, you do the spaghetti like detecting spaghetti and nothing else. So
Right.
then I'm like, okay, sometimes you have to let your baby go.
Right. And Oscar says in the chat, it's slightly less memorable name, but so much easier to write. I would definitely agree. That was one flaw of the Spaghetti Detective name, just from a lot of different reasons standpoints, just the length of the name, in terms of having to type that URL in, having to link to it, all sorts of things. There's just plenty of room for error when you type out the name, but hopefully Obico is a little bit easier to remember once you at least know how to spell it and say it.
Yeah, it's funny like today because the founder of Mainsail, basically the Klipper tool chain, he added us to their Discord server, and he was still called like Obico was previously known as the spaghetti detector. So I'm like, okay, sure, like that has happened so many times.
Right. And yeah, in terms of like the all the keywords that people usually are searching us for, it's all sorts of names around spaghetti detective or spaghetti detector, all sorts of things. So definitely not as easy for Google either there. But yeah, I think that's really the kind of sum of how we got to deciding to change the name. And really, it actually started not with Obico at all. We started in really from like the basis of why do we want to change the name and what do we want to get across with the name change. And actually, the first name that we came up with was Open 3DP, which was basically this first placeholder just in terms of how can we describe what we want to do here. And it's like, you know, we really want to get across this you know, open source 3D printing platform. And that was where the Open 3DP came from. But in the process, we, you know, really tried to take a look at our users and who our users are. And really the kind of succinct way to put it is, you know, we've both been, and I think a lot of our users have also been inspired by Star Wars and other science fiction movies throughout the years. And in our brainstorming process, basically, we end up combining Obi, which is could be short for Obi-Wan Kenobi, with community. And this really was the basis of kind of some different things that we wanted to represent with the brand and with the software in general. And so it ended up being a bit shorter than Open 3DP in the end.
Yeah, so I'm pretty sure, you know, I'm so glad that we didn't take Open 3DP this time around. I got locked out with the spaghetti detective name. I'm pretty sure Open 3DP would have been a new low for my like creativity when it comes to coming up with names.
Right. And the funny part is, I guess you had initially thought that the AI and the failure detection and this kind of brand new feature set in the industry might be a bit confusing for the users. And maybe that's like, you know, why you went with something very descriptive like the spaghetti detective. But it's just ironic that it turned out people actually resonated with that really easily. And it was actually very easy to kind of relate us with the failure detection. So it's just funny how that works out sometimes.
Too easy. It's too easy, like, yeah, to relate. So that you can't remove that first impression.
Right. Cool. Well, I will, I guess, switch over to a couple of just basic announcements while we're on the stream here. If any of you guys are going to be going to MRF, that's the Midwest RepRap Festival. Both Kenneth and I will be going next Friday. It starts Friday through Sunday. And it's going to be our first time going to really any 3D printing kind of event, I think beyond Maker Faire, at least for Kenneth. And so we're both definitely real excited for it and looking forward to meeting more people in some of the different communities around 3D printing, and especially the kind of most open source oriented community that's out there, since it's kind of this, the Midwest RepRap Festival actually started as a place for people to go and build their RepRap printers back in the day, and now it's kind of transformed into more of a festival. So we're definitely looking forward for that.
Yeah, I think as a matter of fact, it's gonna be the first time Neil and I see each other like really like in person. So it's funny that like, you know, COVID just has caused like such a dramatic change of like how people work. But like, also definitely like it's this opportunity, like, you know, I have taken it for granted, like, hey, you know, we work together through the video calls, right? But like, you know, when this become a possibility, I'm like, oh, actually, I'm very excited about meeting, like seeing real people, like standing in front of me and shaking my real hands.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. No, I think it'll be great. It'll be a fun weekend for sure. Cool. Well, I had a couple other short announcements, but I think since we are already 15 minutes in, I'll just go ahead and jump into some of the questions that we got from the users, so we can make sure to get through everything. And then if anyone else has any other questions they want to drop into the chat, then we'll ask. And we just got our first one, so we'll definitely move on to that one shortly. So one question that we got that a lot of people maybe have asked or maybe haven't asked, but we're sure there's some confusion around in general, It's just kind of what's the difference between Obico Cloud and self-hosting? Is Obico free? All of these, kind of different things go into that question. So kind of if you want to just give a little bit kind of background about the differences, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, totally. So basically, the Obico is a 100% like open source projects. By that, well, the mobile app is still not open source yet. With that, we can claim that we're 100%. But like the rest of this the system, right? We have like the plugin into Octoprint. Now we have the plugin into the Klipper ecosystem, and we have the server. So the all these are open source, and that enables like something that's just like very different from almost all the other similar like the remote access solution, which is you can actually have your own Obico server running like right in your computer. A laptop will be able to cut it. So basically, what you can do is you just clone our code from GitHub, and then you just like with a few commands, you can just really run a Obico server on your computer. And this is what we call the self-hosted solution. So meaning that you really can have exactly the same web app, web server as we are, like as you would get from by going to the Obico cloud, basically app.obico.io. You can have exactly the same copy of like server running in your computer. So that's what we call the self-hosted solution. You're free to use that. Like there's no charge to it. This server, like the self-hosted solution, has all the functions that it's not limited to the free plan. Okay, let me get to the cloud first. So the cloud is basically we run exactly the same copy of the Obico server, but it's in the cloud. Basically, we're using Google Cloud for now. And then so that like everyone else who don't want to run their own Obico server can just go to app.obico.io, and you're gonna be up and running in no time. So because the cloud, we are actually paying non-trivial amount of money to Google to host those servers for us. That's why we have like the free plan and the pro plan. The free plan obviously is free, but the pro plan has like all the perks, etc. But it's you will have to the pro plan. I think the base plan is like $4 a month if you pay annually, or like $6 a month. So pro plan has all the perks, bells and whistles. For your own self-hosted server, you have actually almost all the bells and whistles, except that you won't be able to do the mobile push notification. And it's not like we're trying to hold anything back. It's really some kind of technical constraint. I can get into details if you want me to, but like that's the only part that you won't get for your self-hosted server compared to the Obico cloud. I'm not sure if I'm explaining that clearly. So Neil, definitely help me
No,
clarify
yeah,
things. It's probably confusing.
I think that was a pretty good overall explanation. And like, I guess one thing just to make it a little bit more clear in terms of the self-hosting, one thing we've definitely heard from our users is with the kind of optimal server configuration, because when there's no charge for the self-hosting, there's obviously some charge to your electricity and bandwidth and such. But in terms of comparing kind of the Obico cloud and the server, some users with kind of that are able to configure the server properly can get the cost of running their own server a little bit lower if it's configured properly, and there's a bit more customization. For example, with the rebranding, we actually made it so you could customize the front end user interface of the Obico app. Is that right, Kenneth? Just making sure.
Yes. Yeah, you can actually also do a bunch of other things, like you can install your own notification plugin. So the self-hosted server is more customizable because by definition you have access. The server code is right on your computer. You can just go in and change, mess up with it. Nobody will stop you from doing that.
Right, and I guess the important part about why are we why do we have this kind of model like this? And for some users that aren't familiar with self-hosting or servers or anything like that, it could be a bit confusing. But really, the main point is that the 3D printing community in general has a pretty broad range of interests and kind of levels of technical savviness. And what we found is a lot of our users, more than we might expect, are pretty network savvy. They have some Linux knowledge, and they're completely comfortable with going ahead and self hosting their own server. It's not really anything extra for them. But we also realize that a lot of users just don't have the background, or they just don't want to deal with some of the things that come along with doing the self-hosting, like manual updates and other things like that. And so that's why we've split it into these two categories, really just to have the best chance of offering a solution that works for as many of the people in the 3D printing community as we can. Cool. I will go to the next question here. This one, I'm not even sure what the answer is, so I'll defer the first response to you, Kenneth. Have there been any interesting developments with the model, either by us or by anyone else that we've worked with, or at least discussed working with in the past?
That's a really good question. So I assume that by model, like this question referred to the machine learning model. So the let me see how I can answer this question. So we have been like exploring like many ways of like improving the like the basically the machine learning model, but like the whole thing is actually a lot more complicated than if we really like dramatically simplify it, we can think of it as a one model, but it's actually not one model. What we have discovered in the past like month and year, like a little bit more than 2 years of like keep on improving it, is like, as a matter of fact, sorry for like getting very geeky and technical about it. Those kind of hyperparameters are just as important as the machine learning model itself. So the so like I can give like one example, like the because the machine learning, the model is actually model only works on one picture, so one snapshot. Uh, there's no machine learning model that can work on the video. So it's one snapshot, one snapshot, one snapshot. But then the how we detect the failure is not like, oh, we detect a failure on one snapshot, we call it, because like there are always false positive and false negatives. If we detect anything on one snapshot, we call it, almost all of your prints, we will call it. We'll say, oh, there's something that weird going on, right? So we have to like connect them together. And this, the process of like connecting one snapshot after another involves a lot of like hyperparameters. Like at the very first, like the very beginning, we took a very naive route, which is like, hey, let's just do some kind of moving average to see how like the if like just basically smooth out the up and downs. But obviously, like, yeah, it's not that simple. So like the it actually worked to a degree, right? And then but we went into things like again some crazy names like DB scan, like, which was a way to kind of like not only like look into like across the frames, but for each snapshot, we try to cluster if those kind of detected the failures are in the same region. We also did PCA. I don't even remember what that's that called, like principal sum analysis, PCA, principal component analysis. So those are crazy names for like those kind of like um, hyper parameter like tuning. So and like those are a few examples for what like we have been doing. Another thing we actually have been trying to do, we haven't succeeded in doing that, is that a lot of people are saying that the easy way, like not easy, but like one intuitive way to like dramatically improve the accuracy of the model is to compare, like, is to do a 2D projection of the model, and then compare that to like the whatever we're seeing in a camera. We definitely have done a lot of work there. Like the reason why it hasn't worked is like just so difficult. It's easy to do in theory. Like if we have a very pure, like, ideal lab environment, we know exactly, like, where the like the camera is mounted, like its angle, like, the focal length, the distortion it applies to the image. And then if all these things are known, the accuracy is pretty high. But then, once we apply that to, like, the real environment, where we just change that a little bit, like move the camera from here to that there a little bit, everything is thrown off. Basically, those are some examples to just to show, like, the what the things we have been doing. Like we definitely have had some success with, like, for example, hyperparameter tuning was definitely like almost one of the most improved, like the best improvement we have had since we came up with that machine learning model itself. But in the meantime, like the work we have done about, like, trying to compare the 2D projection of model with the real webcam, we haven't had a lot of luck with that. We have a lot of fun, like, trying to, like, explore one way or another. But in the meantime, like, just like almost any other innovation, like uh success is not guaranteed. I don't know if I'm exactly answering the question, but like this is just
Yeah, no, I
it's
think that
basically
definitely did. That
it's
definitely
like,
answered it, and it also answered Janice's question. Even while you were in the middle of that, asked about the G code comparison, and I guess if I remember right, I can't remember his name, but the professor from the university in Canada that's got a lot of work
Joshua.
in the, yeah, Joshua. He's got a lot of work in
Yeah.
the open source industry in general, and I know they're have been working on some things using the G code to compare. I think they had initially started with some Delta printers, and then had started doing with Cartesian as well. So it's definitely something others are working on and trying to figure out too. But yeah, as soon as you get past that lab environment where you know every single variable, things become a lot more difficult. And that's probably just one of the general points about trying to make a software that's really compatible with as many makers as possible, as opposed to just one 3D printer in a very specific environment, because it just won't be all that useful in the end.
Yeah. Oh, another thing, like the Neil, do we still have time? I can add a little bit more interesting
Yeah,
thing
sure.
about the model. So the uh recently there's a, like, I think that was Cleanly Vision, right? There's another project that actually caught my attention. Like they try to detect, like, different kinds of failures, right? So like the we tried that as well. So because, at least on the surface, it's such a great idea. What we found out was, like, some kind of, like, basically that's, how you, like, the things that you will run into when you try, like, try the direction that never has, nobody has traveled before, right? Just unexpected things. What we found out was, like, when we try to detect different failures, it's actually the model becomes a lot less stable. Basically, like, I don't know, like, if I can use analogy, like, say we're trying to do the self-driving car, right? If we just, the only thing we have to do is, like, if there's an obstacle, we avoid it. Otherwise, we go straight, right? That's like as opposed to, hey, I'm trying to detect what kind of obstacles we're talking about. Is it a car? Is it a truck? Is it a pedestrian? Is it a dog? Is it a bike? It sounds a lot better, but then, all of a sudden, like, all the models are less stable. Like, basically your model will be like, oh, is it a bike? Is it a dog? Is it a pedestrian? But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. So you have to avoid all of them. So that was another thing that we actually tried. I'm like, oh, actually, it sounds great in theory, but not necessarily works out better in the real world.
Right. I think with something like that, in terms of the user experience, definitely takes a lot more tuning and tweaking in terms of, like, to make it really useful, because a lot of the things that might happen with my print, I might not even care about, or they might not even matter. For example, like anything that's inside of the infill, you don't see it at the end, but the features that happen inside of an infill, depending on your slicer settings or anything like that, can do a lot of things that might get alerted as under extrusion, or you know, a lot of different things can get tipped off, and a lot of the times they don't really matter as long as they didn't actually mess my print up in the end. So that's, I can definitely see the kind of fine balance trying to play there.
Yeah.
Great. I will move on to one more question here. This one I think is a little more straightforward. In terms of for Obico for Klipper, one user has a Neopixel LED light on his Klipper connected 3D printer, and they're interested in some sort of interface to be able to toggle those lights on and off. And that sounds like something that is a pretty, there's a lot of a few popular Octoprint plugins maybe that allow you to do that, but I can see that's probably where they're missing that feature there.
Yeah, I can definitely see that this is it's one of the things that like the Klipper ecosystem still has to catch up on Octoprint in terms of like feature parity. So I think it's on our roadmap. It's probably not going to be like the most pressing thing we will do on the Klipper, but like we understand that this is we love the Klipper ecosystem, so we will definitely try to prioritize this as high as we can.
Yeah, and I think the more we get people telling us that that's what they want, then it will definitely move up in terms of that priority. So if it is something that you are dying to have and think it should be a higher priority for us, please let us know, and we'll definitely prioritize it accordingly.
Yeah, this is exactly like why we want to hear from you. Like you can go to our GitHub repo, open the a GitHub issue if the not and like if there isn't already an existing issue with for the same like thing you want. If there is an existing one, you can upvote, you can add comments, basically add your own inputs to that tickets, and then this will give a signal in terms of how important this is like this feature request is to the general like the user community of Obico.
Absolutely. All right. Our next question is, can you support landscape mode on the iPad?
Oh yeah, like this is a question we've got quite a few times. Obviously, technically we can, but in reality, it's tricky. Primarily because of the design. Like we're engineers, we're not designers, so like it takes actually a lot of like time and brain power from like from us to really come up with a design. And the reason why I'm saying design is like the how the app should look will be very different when when the iPad is in the landscape mode compared to the portrait mode. So we have finally nailed a pretty good like user experience for the portrait mode. And if for the users who have used our app for more than just a few months, you will see that like we actually transition quite a bit in terms of like the user experience. It's just not easy to figure out what the optimal mobile user experience is. And then if we have to do the landscape mode, we don't have to do a lot of like technical, we don't have to solve a lot of technical difficulties, but then we will have to have a designer, the design talents to help us like, hey, this is how the landscape look like, and this is how the corresponding, oh no, this is how the portrait design looks like, but then the corresponding landscape design, this is the optimal design. And this is a part that's very difficult to cross the bridge. And even if we have the initial design, like every time we change something, we're like, oh, we have to change two places. Like at least like for one, like basically we have to double the design work, which something we're not very good at. I guess that's a very long way to say that I know this is probably a desirable feature for the iPad users. Unfortunately, like just like first of all, like most mobile apps users are like they're using the app on the phone. So iPad account for like less than 5% of the users. And then the cost, like in terms of like how difficult it is for us to come up with a landscape design, it's just pretty high. So it's a very tricky balance for us to prioritize this feature request, high in the queue. We just don't want this feature, don't want us to get stuck in this feature and then block a lot of other features that, other users may want as well.
Right, and for this one, it seems even a little bit more hard to justify because even I think in an optimal situation, most users will prefer on a mobile phone to do everything in portrait mode. And really, the only time they want the landscape mode is to view the full screen webcam or something. And so, coming up with that design probably wouldn't help us in any capacity for the mobile layout. It would be really just kind of for the iPad. I do have an iPad myself, so it's something I would like, but it's definitely just a balance in terms of how to prioritize each additional feature.
Yeah, and also we know that most iPad users have an iPhone anyway. Like I guess that's the case for Neil, the case for me. So or like yeah, we all wish that we have a nice landscape iPad that we can just set the iPad on the stand and just watch that. But in the meantime, like, oh, there's a gazillion of other things that our users want us to do. So I'm like, I'm gonna put up with it. I'd rather spend the time to make, for example, the iPhone app a lot more robust.
Right. Great. I think that does it for our written down questions that we got from some of the users, but we do have a few that have popped up in the chat here. So I'll just scroll up and go ahead with the first one. This is from Oscar. You've done a few interviews with us over the years. Such interviews usually confirm or depart ideas you had before, but was there anything that surprised you? So in terms of the customer discovery interviews and chats we've had with different users, sounds like Oscar's been one of them throughout the years. Has anything really, usually we go into those interviews with some hypotheses, or at least trying to figure out if we're onto something in some certain direction. But has in any of those interviews anything been super surprising, where it was like the exact opposite of what you went into the interview thinking?
I don't know if it's exactly the opposite, but like I feel like the realization that how powerful the first impression of the name was like something that was pretty shocking, right? Like the Neil, I don't like you probably remember like probably more than 50% of users we talked to, they were not even aware of the tunneling feature that we have built and been live for like more than half a year at least, right? Like they're like, oh really, like you do that? So that was like, okay, like because I think the at the end of the day what we found out was like when I guess people's brain is like primed to think that this is a failure detection app, like we just stop looking for other things, right? If we download something that like random ABC app, we'll start like exploring the app and like, whoa, do you have this? Do you have that? Oh, that's interesting, right? But then when you download like I don't know, like news reading app, like you probably wouldn't try to explore if that news reading app will actually play a song. So I guess
Right.
that's in the hindsight it was pretty obvious, but like when we heard that, we're like, oh, really?
Yeah, and I think with that, one of the surprising parts was we talked to plenty of users that had basically told us that they were using the Spaghetti Detective app, mobile app, and the web app for remote monitoring and for failure detection. But in terms of how they discovered us or how they would describe the product to someone else, definitely the first thing was around the failure detection. And that kind of those remote monitoring and other features were often second. But then when we actually started doing a few surveys with users, 3 or at least 2 surveys in a row, the webcam streaming was actually what you guys indicated as the most important feature about the product. So failure detection was always either first or second just by a little bit, but it was definitely just more and more obvious that the ability to check on the print and see exactly what's going on at any time, anywhere was more and more of a desirable feature. So that definitely was a bit surprising. I think when we first went into it, we had a little bit of a hypothesis that maybe that was the case, but it was, I think, a bit more overwhelming how much it really was.
Yeah, I definitely echo that, right? Yes, it's what the name indicated. I really went in, like, I really started this project purely is like, hey, this is a failure detection project. But when, when I started to talk to users like you, and I'm so glad that I did. I heard it over and over, like, oh, like, I want to see the webcam streaming. I'm like, oh, you don't need to see that because we're gonna watch that for you. Forget about it. You don't have to see that. But over and over, when people are like, I do want to see it, even if I know that you're watching it, I still want to see it. I'm like, okay, sure, I should listen to you. That I guess was all, like, the webcam streaming came about. And I think it's fair to say that in terms of, like, streaming remotely, right, not just like locally, like, our solution is probably still like the neatest, because we're doing the H.264 streaming, it's WebRTCs, it's usually pretty responsive, and we're working on more things to improve that. Now we understand that webcam streaming is important for you guys.
Right. Cool. Let's see what else we have here. I think we did have at least. Oh, here's one from. I guess I'm not going to try to say the name. Are there plans for an Obico software PC slash? Are there plans for an Obico software for the PC slash Mac?
I'm not sure if this question is for the server or for the plugin. So server, it's probably not obvious, right?
I think it sounds more like for example, you can go to figma.com to go to Figma, or you can download their web app that gives you the same exact interface, but it's a or you don't download the web app, but you download their Windows package.
The native app.
Right.
That's a good question. Probably not for PC anytime soon, but as a matter of fact, the mobile app, it's probably not optimized for the Mac, but if you have an M1 Mac, you can actually directly just download our app and run it. So, okay, it's not optimized.
Right, isn't that because they with the M1 they are making a lot more of the like mobile apps compatible with the Mac? Is that just the kind of general thing there?
Yeah, it's actually surprisingly compatible. So we didn't know that that was not our intention to do. But then once we submit that to App Store, I don't have a M1 Mac, but like one of our developers does, and he downloaded it. It's like it worked, like right off the bat. I'm like, okay, I'm impressed. I have to give kudos to Apple on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see. Here's one more. How dangerous or expensive in time would it be to open source the mobile app?
It's not that dangerous. I think we're getting really close. And it's pushed out a little bit, since we spend a little bit more time on the streaming part recently. Yeah, I think as long as we're careful enough. Okay, so I guess the reason why this question was asked was probably like like people are aware that it's the mobile app is nasty in terms of like the whole mobile app platform in terms of either Android or iOS were not designed to be open source friendly. So like the whole architecture, like they just say you throw all of your keys and certificates and everything into a big bundle. And the problem with that is, if you are like a developer who just like build this app and push that to App Store, not a problem, because you keep your repo private. However, like we do realize a lot of people are asking us, if and when we're gonna open source the mobile app part. But then we looked into that, like it's a jumbo mass of like keys here and keys there. Actually, one key can like be duplicated in several places, and we have to really extract those keys out, and then we have to have a way. Basically, there's no existing framework for that. We have to create from like scratch a mechanism to extract all those sensitive information like keys and certificates out, and then put them back in when we are doing it. So basically, we're gonna have to like, it's a pretty complicated technical story about it. I guess it's a very long way to say that like we have done quite a bit of work on that. We were hoping that we could made it open source, could have made it open source a little bit earlier, but we're definitely working on it. We're pretty close.
Yeah, and so based on that, it's definitely not the kind of thing we want to rush and just throw out. We want to definitely make sure there's no issues with that before doing it. So we'll be kind of testing that internally for sure firsthand. And then I guess the second side to that in terms of like once we open source it, then it's more of a matter in terms like it still has some difficulties depending on your level of development skills and the need to get those developer keys. But we've heard that definitely from some users at least, they are in that position and are looking forward to doing some things with it. So we'll be sure to announce that when we finally do have it ready.
Yeah, this question is related to the previous like at least part of the things we previously talked about, that the self-hosted server cannot do the push notification. So once the mobile app is open source, in theory, if you know how to do it, I think it's gonna be pretty complicated. But if you are a mobile developer and you have decent like skill of like debugging, like working with the mobile app, you will be able to, at least in theory, to figure out a way to inject your own developer key into the app, and then you put actually inject the certificates into the app, and you put a key in your self-hosted server, and then your server will eventually start to be able to send a push notification to your own phone. It's still gonna be challenging, but it'll be possible once the mobile app is open sourced.
Great, awesome. Here we go. Is it or will it be possible to view files for Obico to view files from the Pi memory like through Octoprint? So basically just to be able to upload it from the SD card.
From SD card or
files from the Pi memory, I guess is what they asked.
Right. So this also is something that we wish we had more resources to get to. We probably will at some point. So basically the plan, so short story, it's on our roadmap. The plan is to have a more like a natural way to integrate whatever G code you save in the Obico cloud or in a server, and make it like seamlessly integrated with the G code you have already uploaded to Octoprint, and you can just choose from any of them without like really knowing that, oh, I'm working with the file in Obico server versus I'm working with the file in Octoprint. It's coming. Well, it will come at some point. I guess that's what I can say.
Yeah, and maybe when we kind of take some time to work with the file management, I know that's been something that's been asked a lot of times as well, whether it's doing something with folders or some sort of tagging system. Those are definitely things that are on the radar. Haven't been super prioritized yet. So if it is again something that everyone is asking for, then please let us know, and we will try to prioritize it more highly.
Oh, since we're talking about like not having enough developer resource to do all the features, everyone will be more than welcome to really contribute to this projects in any forms, right? Obviously, writing code, that would be awesome. But believe it or not, we actually we want we um we want more help on the documentation side than the coding side of it. Because every time we change something, like it's really a drag for us. I to go back to the documentation and like change everything that we have changed in the code to match to make the document match the reality. When we need a lot of people help us with the testing, and as a matter of fact, we're very actively working on the adaptive bitrate streaming. And it's a risky move, and we need a lot of people like testing, doing the beta testing to make sure that whatever we change, the crazy changes we're gonna make to make this possible will not break your well, at least won't break a lot of users pie or whatever. So yeah, we need your help.
Yeah, and beyond just like the documentation, it can be anything in terms of like just reporting a typo, any like new projects. For example, one of our users today figured out a convenient way to run, I think, Obico for Klipper, 2 printers on 1 Raspberry Pi, and just went ahead and wrote up a great guide on that. And I'm going to see if we can figure out a way to incorporate that into our blog or our doc somehow. So any projects that you guys are using Obico for or adding anything to, we definitely appreciate it, and we'll love to incorporate it into our documentation further.
And that was a perfect example of like helping us, right? Just do something, right? Like once you have done something that, or you found a problem, either bring that back to us or just like write a blog. In that case, that user wrote a Reddit in our subreddit, a Reddit post. And then guess what? I'm gonna just almost just copy paste and do some formatting, and becomes the next piece of document. So that's just so helpful.
Yep, absolutely. Let's see if we've got any more questions here. Let's see. No more questions at the moment. If you guys do have any other questions, definitely drop them in the chat now. Otherwise, we'll probably call it pretty soon here. Appreciate we've definitely got some more viewers and commenters and action in the stream this time. So it's been good to be able to answer some of these questions. Oh, yep. One more question. Just curious, how many people work for the Obico team?
Oh, that's a good question. So we say that the full time so far, just me and Neil. So, but we are also working with like a few contractors here and there. Primary on like the most part that we outsource in terms of the contractors are the design work, right? Our new web page was completely outsourced. Guess what? Like we're not good at coming up with a new web page design. And a good chunk of our mobile app design was also outsourced to some design contractors. So yeah, me and Neil are full time, a few part time contractors.
Yep. I think that's everything. So thanks again, everyone, for joining. If this is something you guys like, definitely let us know. We're happy to do more Ask Me Anything style streams, or some other types of live streams, just to get kind of talking to you guys and hear what you have to say. It's always very beneficial every time we do it. So thanks again for joining, and definitely let us know if you want to have more of it.
All right. Nice talking to you guys.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Bye.